Hi, this is John Austin, and this is a short presentation to address a couple of the issues, questions that probably will arise, that some have already sort of started emerging, about the use of YouTube as the vehicle for the presentation of the second assignment in course EDC 1200. I don't intend in this short presentation to have a look at anything to do with the structural requirements of the assignment, the techniques and tips about what might go in there. All those sorts of things are covered already in material on the study desk. So if you're looking for that sort of information here, you won't find it. What I'd like to look at here is an explanation of why we've chosen YouTube as a particular site for this assignment, and then to perhaps address a couple of the issues about privacy or public performance and all those sorts of things which may come up, and you may be thinking about them anyway. And if I can address them here, hopefully we can save a lot of time and angst through the course of the rest of the semester to allow us to actually deal with some of the more substantive content of the course. So could I start by talking to the issue of, or the question of, why YouTube? Now, for many people, YouTube is just a fact of life. It's a way of doing things. Typically these, not only, but typically teenagers into mid-20s will have absolutely no concern about using YouTube and similar sort of social and public sites. Facebook, MySpace and so forth allows the same sort of capacity to mount video clips and add comments and have other people able to access those. YouTube is a particularly important site for educators. Not only does it have that personal, social, this is what I did on my weekend, or look at how stupid I can be when I'm out with my mates type of effect and a dimension, and that's probably the most common impression that arises in people's heads if they're not familiar with YouTube. There is a very, very powerful social memory, public memory and public education component or dimension to YouTube as well. If you haven't had a look around on YouTube, I really would encourage you to do that. If you have a particular artist, band, whatever, and you want to see some of their particular performances, type their name into a search in YouTube. If you want to have a look at how to change a leaking tap washer, put that into a search term, as a search term into YouTube, and see what you come up with. I don't know, by the way, whether you'll find out how to fix your tap and save yourself some plumbing bills, but I suspect that given that you can find most other how-to things there, you'll be able to find that as well. So YouTube as a public memory repository, as in a whole heap of things that might otherwise disappear or be lost, in things that have been visually, usually video recorded, it is there. So it's a repository like a museum or a library with massive public access, as in anyone anywhere in the world who can actually access YouTube can locate this material. You don't need to be a member of a library or a video club or something like that. All you need to do is to be able to hook in to the site. In terms of public education, the same thing goes. And more educators have used and are using YouTube as a place for both resources for their teaching in terms of their preparation, and also sites for the products of some of their teaching, that is student learning and all those other bits and pieces, to be mounted for either distribution or availability to a broader community, or to help in developing a professional community, like a repository of teaching ideas and teaching tips, professional development almost for other educators. In this particular assignment, we're asking you to utilise this site, and more obviously the professionally oriented aspects of this site, to put together some ideas about a particular topic that could connect to difference and diversity. Why we're asking you to mount it there is for two main reasons. Number one, our most important major concern, I guess, is to contribute to that professional community, to provide ideas for your colleagues and your peers as to how you might go about, or some ideas that they could use in their own teaching, looking at this sort of material. So here's what so-and-so did, here's what Fred did, here's what Mary did. Second reason that we're using this is that for most people taking this course, getting teacher registration at the end of their program is a particularly important aim or purpose for actually taking the suite of courses they're taking in the first place. In order to be registered in Queensland, this a graduate from this program has to have developed, amongst a whole heap of other things that the Queensland College of Teachers maintains, you have to have developed a whole suite of skills and familiarities with what they call ICTs, Information and Communications Technologies. Now, let's forget for a moment that a piece of chalk, a stick, anything is a piece of technology. They're talking about new computer-based technologies. And so for teachers to be registered, they have to demonstrate they have some currency with new current forms of technology available to them in the classroom as educators. Each of the courses in the various undergraduate programs we offer here carries with it an expectation of an additional sort of learning outcome in terms of our contribution to the development of that familiarity and those skills with new ICTs. In this course, we've encouraged people to utilise visual bits and pieces in the first assignment if possible, and now in the second assignment we're asking you to actually utilise a very, very powerful educational resource in the shape of YouTube. Now, YouTube itself is, as I've said, is a very, very complex, it's an absolutely massive site. How it's funded, how it pays its way, I guess there are some advertisements that crop up, but all of that stuff is beyond me. What I do know is that we, as members of the academic community, utilise YouTube in our work all the time. And I'd just like to run through in this presentation, just very quickly, a couple of examples. The screen that you're looking at right now is the actual EDC 1200 site. This is where, when you mount your clip, this is where it will be. This is where people will come to find it. Now, the YouTube itself is utilised by many, many schools, countless numbers. I've just pulled up one example from a local high school here in Toowoomba that uses YouTube to advertise itself. Let me play a little. There you go, that was a very little bit. In a broader professional sense, YouTube is a really great resource if you're looking for material to support work you're doing, either as students in assessment work or coming to understand more about teaching. It also is a very, very powerful source of teaching material. For example, sound down a little bit. With significant members of that critical pedagogical community have actually been videoed and their work mounted on the site. Joe Kinchlow, the late Joe Kinchlow, Henry Giroux, not him, all sorts of people, examples of this in their work, mounted here for free public access. We also find in our own work, Andrew and myself, for example, utilise YouTube frequently. We've put together a series of instructional teaching materials for people interested in particular types of research. Here's an example from the ethnography, some ethnography work we'd put together. We've utilised this for providing reports about conferences and other activities that we've been engaged in. Just very quickly running through examples of conference presentations are all on YouTube. We also find that organisations such as IDOS, which is a major educational consortium for research in Queensland, uses IDOS all the time, uses YouTube all the time to mount their bits and pieces for people to get access to. So what I'm getting at here is that YouTube in itself is a particularly powerful site. It is nothing that is unusual, it's not avant-garde, it's very much mainstream. If you have concerns about accessing it and whatever, I'd encourage you to log in, have a look, and utilise the help bits and pieces there, and more importantly to ask if you have some questions about it.